All right. Uh, Hi dilly ho, everybody. It's Matthew Smart with another live stream on this channel. And this is a bit of a different one, if you couldn't already tell by the title and the thumbnail and everything. I wanted to do something a little bit more near and dear to my heart. This sort of just popped up in my head as of recently, considering the time of year it is. Because for those that do not know, hi barman. For those who don't know, April is considered Autism Acceptance Month. It's still technically called Autism Awareness Month, but we sort of coined the term acceptance in as of 2011 as a bit more of a progressive way of talking about autism, which I appreciate a lot. And I am on the autistic spectrum myself, uh, so that's how you know that I'm a gamer. And I was diagnosed when I was like 2 years old, and it's been a part of me for my entire life. In fact, for those who don't know, I don't really talk about this a lot. My main channel, back when I started it in like 2013, it used to be called, and I'm not joking when I say this, I called it Matthew the Autism Guy. As sort of a way to make autism just acceptance a bit more accepted in the gaming spaces. And yeah, it was yeah, I named my channel after autism despite being about gaming. It was a terrible idea, and I changed the name to just Matthew Smart in 2017. Uh, but regardless, it's been a part of me for basically my entire life. And I kind of want to do something like, given that I have a bit of a platform, I wanted to do something that was a bit special to myself. And obviously, I still have a while to go before I actually have like a bigger presence on the internet space, if we even make it that far. But I want to do some sort of special stream like once a year to sort of celebrate autism and like neurodivergence and just disabilities in general, whether it be in the gaming space or otherwise. And so that is why I'm doing this stream today. And I figured I kind of want to just talk about my own personal experiences with autism and just dealing with people with disabilities throughout all of my life. You got diagnosed in your 30s. That's wild. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some people get diagnosed with mental conditions of all kinds way later on. I think Jacksepticeye, I think he announced that he had autism like a couple years ago after not figuring that out for his entire life. And that changed a lot for him, and that it's good for him. I appreciate him for that. And so, I just want to have a bit of an outlet to sort of discuss my own personal experiences with it throughout my life, and sort of just how other people deal with it in general, whether it be through all the good and the bad that's brought me. And I want to do it in a way that I feel like can bounce off into a really interesting conversation. And so, I think it'd be a good idea to talk about it by watching a video, or more specifically, a podcast episode that's all about neurodivergence. I have autism, ADHD, and OCD. Every day is challenging, but I try my best and never give up. Whenever I feel down, I think about Sonic the Hedgehog and Red from Pokemon. I was diagnosed in 2003. It's funny you mentioned Sonic in particular, because when I was at that convention, Game on Expo, back in like last month, my friend Shooting Films and I, who was in the chat earlier, we saw this panel that was dedicated towards how a lot of people with autism really connect with Sonic the Hedgehog. And I think I think last year that person did the same sort of panel with Pokemon in particular as well. And yeah, I could definitely see why, based on a lot of the things that make Sonic and Pokemon in general special, whether it be the creature collecting, the wild colors, the fast pace, and everything. There's a lot that you can discern from that if you are in that space. So what we're gonna be doing today is we're gonna be watching an episode of a podcast where this episode's subject is very much about neurodivergence. And that podcast is Alive with Steve Burns. Now, for those that are unfamiliar, Steve Burns, his claim to fame was as the host of a very, very famous children's show from the late 90s to the early 2000s called I think frames dropped a little bit, but we're fine now. Yeah, Steve Burns was the host of a very, very famous children's show called Blue's Clues. It was a show that my brother and I watched a lot from like the late 90s to like the early 2000s. And basically the premise of the show was that Steve was on this massive blue screen and basically just in the show you would actually see a giant house, this animated house in this really, really colorful place, and you would see all these characters, specifically the dog here, Blue, is Steve's pet puppy in the show. And those two would interact with tons of anthropomorphic objects like salt and pepper shakers and like the mailbox and everything, and just sort of solve problems through critical thinking skills. Basically, like for example, right, an episode would be about trying to make a snack, right? And they would find clues around the house that would involve certain ingredients in order to make this specific snack, like graham crackers, for example, with some orange juice or something. Is that my brother Ethan in the chat? My goat. Yeah, so it was a very, very successful show back in the day when it aired on Nick Jr., and my brother and I were obsessed with it back in the day. One time, one of my friends and I Googled, where does paprika come from? And the first result we got was do not watch Blue's Clues. That's funny. That is funny. Yeah, so Steve and eventually the host Joe, who would end up replacing Steve later on, did so much to sort of teach children about lots of things in life that could connect with them, whether it be numbers and music or just letters, shapes, just snacks and everything, sleeping, anything that they could really connect with. And a lot of time has passed, and what was it? I think it's been like 30 years since the show aired, and Steve would end up doing a lot to basically give back to fans of Blue's Clues from back in the day. He showed up, I'm making sure the stream isn't dropping frames and everything. Of course. Oh boy. Don't you just love when the internet just decides to like drop frames on you for basically no reason? You gotta love it, especially in a streaming environment. Let me know if it gets particularly bad and I'll see what I can do about it. But essentially, Steve would give back in a lot of ways. He appeared in a recent Blue's Clues movie about like the reboot show and everything. He would film a really wonderful video just sort of giving back to the fans and being like, oh, how I never forgot you and everything. And so, the letter song is a banger. Truth nuke. And so, Steve's most recent endeavor is to sort of make sort of a modernized version of Blue's Clues, but for adults, basically. For those that basically grew up with the show and wants to sort of meet people at their level and deal with the problems that they're facing within their world. And so that brings us to Alive with Steve Burns. This is basically his let me just refresh the page for a second, make sure it's all clear. Okay, so yeah, Alive with Steve Burns is basically Steve's modern day venture. It's a podcast that talks about issues that adults face in their world. So, for example, right, he's done videos about he's talked about subjects like death and stuff like, religion and faith and dealing with money issues and stuff like that. Stuff that the average adult is able to connect with and relate to, and trying to meet people at their level. So he films in this really nice wooden house that he lives in, and he brings on a guest every single episode that's sort of an expert in a specific field to sort of talk about whatever subject is on Steve's mind that day. So, for example, he'll get someone like Adam Savage from the popular show Mythbusters to talk about critical thinking and truth in a time when truth is just sort of hard to come by. Or he'll get someone like, let's say, a hospice nurse right here, Julie McFadden, to sort of talk about death and how people go through it, and just sort of, the fear of it and why it's okay and everything. Just stuff that's like really mature and just really just well done. Just stuff that really connects in a powerful way. And so I've been needing to catch up on this podcast a lot because it's really nice and fascinating. Steve's presence is just very calm and welcoming so that anyone can sort of connect with it. And so, with it being Autism Acceptance Month, I feel like it might be time to finally watch this episode in particular about neurodivergence and why people like me, we go through what we do, and trying to figure out, like, what do we really call normal in a human being? So we're going to be reacting to it. I'm going to be pausing a lot just so I can bounce off the discussion and everything. You should definitely check out this podcast on your own time. If you're someone that is just trying to answer the big questions of life, I think that this is 100% worth the time. So with that in mind, hey, thank you so much, Daniel. Daniel Pinkham. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Thank you so much for the super chat, dude. I really appreciate that. How are you doing Friday? Hope you're doing well. I am doing pretty dang good, all things considered. We're about to watch this podcast episode about neurodivergence and have a gay old time. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into it and have a very nice discussion with Steve and his guest, a doctor named Desiree Jones. So I'm gonna go ahead and move the screen to the side a little bit so that you can see Steve in full. And we'll hop right in to a really, really nice podcast. And it's available on pretty much everything. Like Spotify, you can find this podcast if you just want to listen to it. He's partnered with this company called Lemonada that hosts the podcast as well. And I think there was some behind the scenes material that's exclusive to that platform. So that's pretty neat. But yeah, without further ado, Steve, my man, take it away, my man. Alive with Steve Burns. Yeah, you could tell that the Blue's Clues vibes are. Oh wait, oh hold on. My apologies. I forgot to turn the desktop audio back on. Let me start over. But yeah, you could tell right off the bat how just he sort of tries to give that Blue's Clues vibe, but more so in a mature, meeting you at your level kind of way.
Hey, there you are. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Come on in. Welcome to Alive. So, okay. Would you consider yourself to be a normal person?
And he stops to sort of let people answer like back in the day. And I would say, I hope that I would consider myself to be as normal as possible. Despite the challenges that face me.
I'm making tea. Do you want tea? Okay.
I would love some tea, thank you. I'm not even a tea person, but when it's coming from you, I will accept it.
I'd say most of the time, I consider myself to be a relatively normal person. But then I remember that I'm a 51-year-old eccentric bachelor who has elected to live entirely alone, off-grid, in the woods, halfway up a mountain like some bald woodland cryptid. And I think, maybe not so much.
I mean, to be fair, I think that when it comes to just trying to live your life peacefully and sort of trying to get away from insanity, I would like to think that is relatively normal to an extent. It's not something that everyone's gonna do, but again, like the episode is called like the headline is "Who decides what is normal?" So like, it's really up to you if you consider that normal or not. Maybe you're pushing it a little bit, but I would say, it arguably feels like sometimes you just need to get away from it all to get a sense of normalcy. So I get it.
I ask because, there's a lot of talk about neurodivergence lately. Autism has been, the way that people who think or communicate differently relate to the rest of us. Here's your tea.
Thank you very much. I got ginger ale, but I'm good.
I know that Blue's Clues had a really profound impact on the autistic community, and I've always wanted to know why.
Yeah.
But anyway, everyone's different, right? Unique. So it's not always so easy to tell who's neurodivergent anyway.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Like, I definitely consider myself on the higher functioning end, but I've definitely met a lot of people with autism where it's just like, for some people it's much more obvious to see compared to some others where it's just really, really difficult to see it. Yeah, it's really difficult to pinpoint precisely, and to some I would say that's a good thing. But yeah, I feel like part of the reason why Blue's Clues, I think, was so successful with a lot of people with autism was mainly comes down to not only the calming presence of Steve as a host, or Joe, or Josh in the case of Blue's Clues and You, which was like the reboot series that lasted for a while. Just a very warm and inviting presence from those guys. And also just the pretty colors, and also just, I think a lot of people with autism just like to try and find the whimsy in whatever they can possibly find. If anything, yeah, I mean, I liked Joe too. I mean, if anything, I grew up more with Joe, actually. My brother Ethan, he was more of the Steve guy. But I think also just like the colors for one, and also just with the whimsy and trying to find the whimsy in basically anything, whether it be in stuff like, all the anthropomorphic objects in the show. Like, there are literal characters based off, like, a bar of soap, or, like, salt and pepper and everything. And, like, I think a lot of children with autism sort of liked to just create stories with whatever they could find that looked interesting to them. I know excuse me, I know I certainly did.
And what does the term even mean, you know? And also, who gets to decide what's normal?
Exactly.
What do you think?
I think that it is very much, I will say that judging by a lot of internet commenters I see online, a lot of them really, I will objectively say they aren't normal, they need help, but I really do think our sense of normality really just depends on, like, what it is that we're seeing and, like, how people act regardless of what's thrown at them in life. I think that's where I sort of stand on that issue. Like, my mother always says normal is never amazing. But yeah, at the same time, some people are not normal for the wrong reasons. But I don't think autism itself specifically has to do with it. But I'm sure we're going to get more and more into it once we actually get more into the actual episode. So, yeah.
Huh. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's go. Okay. All right. So,
I'm noticing the Mr. Rogers little Funko Pop in the back. As much as I appreciate Mr. Rogers, I'm not sure how I feel about the Funko Pop. And you could see, like, his old handy-dandy notebook in the back, so that's sweet.
Desiree Jones is an associate professor of psychology and director of the SHINE Lab. That stands for Stigma, Human Interaction, and Neurodivergent Experiences at the University of Maryland. Before that, she was a president's postdoctoral fellow, which sounds incredibly official to me. She started at Wellesley studying both.
It's sad that Blue's Clues and You was taken down from Paramount Plus. Apparently, I literally just learned, like, shortly before I even went live here, that Blue's Clues and You actually was canceled. The host of that show, Josh, like, literally mid that last year, which is unfortunate, actually. Because, like, from what I heard, that reboot was actually pretty dang good. I watched the movie that they put out, where they, like, went to New York and everything, and it was, like, actually really freaking solid. I think it's a really good children's movie, and even gave a lot of love to the adults that grew up with the program. But yeah, so as far as Desiree Jones in particular, I'm not familiar with her as a person at all. But I do appreciate that the fact that hold on a minute. Okay, freaking. Oh my god. Okay. Alright, guys, look, I'm sorry. I really am. I cannot stand the frames dropping like this for no reason. This is unacceptable. I'm gonna be right back, actually. I'm sorry. Give me a few minutes. I'm gonna go unplug my internet and replug it back in, and to hope that this ends up fixing the problem. And then, are we back in it? Are we back in it? I'm just giving it some, oh boy, it's still going like crazy for like no reason. I'm gonna give it a minute to see. We're back. Oh boy. And it still says I'm dropping frames like crazy. It's literally like, Let me check something real quick. Yeah, all my settings are still fine, everything. Okay, yeah, this is... Oh my gosh. Yeah, it like 30% of the time. Yeah, that is unacceptable. That is unacceptable. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just flat out restart my computer and OBS in general and see if that fixes that. Yeah, so let me just go ahead and do that real quick because yeah, this is the like last resort thing. So give me a minute. I'll be all right. Are we back for real now? All right. It's been about 15 seconds. No frames have dropped for no reason. So, hopefully, that whole thing has been finally sorted out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Things seem to be thankfully doing a lot better now. So yeah, hopefully we don't have to deal with something like that again for the rest of the stream. I'm sorry, everyone. Computer be computing sometimes. Just it can be stupid. I don't know. Like, I still need to get in the groove with streaming again, but like sometimes stuff like that happens and it's just like it's just so frustrating. You can't always figure out something. Things will just stop working for no reason. You have to try and troubleshoot in order to get it fixed. Hey, Zom Lewis, nice to see you. Yeah, so, yeah, as I was saying earlier, to get back into it, Steve typically does not get super big popular names on the podcast. He'll get them every now and then. Like, you know, he did an episode with Jamie Lee Curtis. He did one with friggin' Bill Nye. But for the most part, he's going to get people that are mostly known for being a specific field to sort of be the ones to participate in the conversation with him. Like, normal people that can, like, meet a conversation that are just really, really good in a certain field. Yeah, it's all good, Zom. It's nice to see you stop by. But yeah, people that specialize in a certain field rather than just trying to get big names for views. And some of these episodes do still get big views regardless. Like, this one has like 191,000 views, and that's pretty freaking cool to me. Yeah. With that being said, let's actually get into this proper now.
Studying both neuroscience and psychology. Apparently, one brain degree wasn't enough. Then she went on to the University of Texas at Dallas for a master's in applied cognition and neuroscience, followed by a PhD in psychological sciences. Some people collect Funko Pops. Desiree collects diplomas, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, don't think I missed the Mr. Rogers Funko Pop in the back. It's funny because I actually, like, at a previous convention I was at, like, I think a couple years ago, I won, like, a Pikachu Funko Pop from, like, this quiz show and everything. And I still do not know who I'm supposed to give it to, because I would rather be caught dead before being seen with a Funko Pop.
Her research is about autism, stigma, and intersectionality, basically all the ways in which society decides who's normal and who isn't. And in 2023, she landed on the Forbes 30 Under 30 science list, which is to say she's one of those extraordinarily accomplished people who is also simultaneously very, very young and therefore totally intimidating to me.
Yeah, I mean, literally, it's like, I don't think I'm ever gonna... I am not skilled enough in really any field to really... to ever earn myself in a 30 under 30 But that's okay. You know, some people don't find success until much later in life, and that's cool.
She's here.
Hello, Desiree.
Hey, how you doing today?
Hi, Steve. I'm doing really great. I'm so glad that I could catch you.
I am so excited that you're here. You're so kind.
Yeah. He always has a special guest on this show, and it's really cool.
And to join us. Now, do I call you Desiree or do I call you Desi?
Yeah, I go by Desi usually, especially with friends. And yeah, hopefully we can be friends.
Are we friends? We're friends.
I hope so. I hope I can.
Another thing I really like is like, just the fact that this doesn't happen with every guest, but the fact that sometimes the guest will be on the green screen and you'll just see the outside of like Steve's backyard, just behind to like sort of immerse you more into like, you know, his little world. I don't think he does that these days. I think in more recent episodes it's more so just face to face like conversation through webcams, which is fine, but I really like this app in particular. It makes it feel like they're actually outside the house having a nice conversation, and I think
Tell
that's
everyone
great.
I'm friends with you, Steve. I think
Well, you
know that would earn me a lot of credibility.
listen. You came over to my window. You're willing to talk to me about stuff I don't know anything about, and you're super cool and super nice, and we're totally friends. And
All right.
thank you for being here.
Thank you.
She looks like she's in a Zoom call. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's how these episodes are recorded. I think yeah, because most people outside like, you know, gaming and like huge online streams, for most people that just want to have like business calls, everything, we typically just use Zoom. That's how I did all my meetings with my teachers in college back in the pandemic era.
So, full disclosure, this is not a topic I know a whole lot about, but it is something I would like to know a whole lot about. In part because of my former job. And we can get into that. But before we get too far, I want to talk about this term neurodivergence because it's something I hear all the time. We all hear all the time. I hear a lot of people say it.
COVID ruined education. COVID ruined a lot of stuff. Like, let's not kid ourselves here. Yeah, in my case, it definitely. That was like right when I actually started taking college after taking like a few years off of high school because of like personal experiences with high school. I was not the biggest fan of that era of my life. So like it happened. So like the pandemic came in like right as soon as I started going to college. So I only had like 2 months before we actually had to just stay at home and be online for like 2 years. So it was very weird in my case. But for me, I think it was more so like my focus was just sort of like get good grades, do the subjects. We still did like video calls and everything. So it was like we still were able to get work done. In hindsight, yeah, I definitely preferred the in-person experience. But yeah, it was just a strange time to do anything. Yeah, it makes sense. It's also very cozy and very funny at the same time. Yeah, no, I love this format a lot.
But I feel like people mean a lot of different things. When I'm not sure everyone's talking about the same thing. So what do you think it is?
Yeah, so I think you can't really talk about neurodivergence without talking about this broader topic of neurodiversity, right? So, starting at the basic building blocks for that, this is something I talk a lot about with students and things like that because, a lot of people are interested in learning about this. But basically, if you think about the world, I think one of the things that makes it so beautiful is that we're all different from each other. We have people, different races, different backgrounds, different heights, ages, things like that. Neurodiversity applies that idea to our brains. It's kind of a framework looking at, different types of brains. So you have neurotypical people. These are people whose brains function in what's seen as like a typical way. Society was kind of built around their needs. The way that they process the world and respond to things and behave is seen as like typical behaviors within like a culture or the world around us. People whose brains process things a little differently might behave a little differently from those norms. They're called neurodivergent. So
I see.
This is a pretty broad term for a lot of people. I think, like you were saying, a lot of people can define it differently. So,
I mean, yeah, she's basically on point with that. Yeah, neurodivergence is mainly just, how your brain processes things differently from others. And, like, yeah, in my case, I definitely was very, very different from your average child from back in the day. Whereas whereas, people would go by clear, strict rules all the time. I would more so hyperfixate on one specific thing, which in my case was usually video game related, and just sort of go from there and apply that logic to like everything I did. Obviously, if I had to do something, I would still do it, but more so, yeah, it's just how the brain processes things in different ways that can put some people ahead more so than others in some cases. There are a lot of neurodivergent people who specialize in very specific fields and do that brilliantly. This is very interesting and informative. Thank you so much. Yeah, it is part of the reason why I want to do this stream, because I feel like this promotes a very interesting discussion that, I feel like a lot of people either are too afraid to talk about, or is just, they just don't really have the knowledge to sort of like get much out of it. I'm 25 and still feel like I haven't achieved much and wish I studied more in school. I think we all do have that sort of regret in our lives of like, we wish we could have done things differently, but at the same time, it's just like, you can never turn the clock back. So the best thing you can do is like, take what you do regret, learn from it, and sort of apply it in the future so that you don't really have to so that you don't exactly have to worry moving forward about making those same mistakes, which inevitably people will, but that's just how human nature is.
So sometimes you might see it used to define really only like developmental conditions like autism and ADHD especially.
It is giving Blue's
I'm an
Clues for
autism
adults.
researcher.
Yeah, that is
ADHD,
sort of,
so those are kind of
the logic
framework,
behind this
but,
show, yeah.
If you think about it, people with things like mental health conditions, mental illness, that also affects how you experience the world, how you process things. People with anxiety or depression or schizophrenia.
Anxiety and depression, baby. Anxiety and depression. We did it. We got the buzzwords of mental health ever made. We've finally achieved it. I'm obviously being a tool on purpose. I'm sorry.
They're often judged for their behaviors and in need of like extra supports and things like that. And then you can even go as far as talking about people with acquired things like people who have had strokes, things like that. That affects the brain, that affects how you experience the world around you and respond. So I think that I'm not trying to gatekeep, neurodiversity and neurodivergence. I think that,
No, I don't think
if
she
a person
is.
is experiencing these difficulties.
Why does the thumbnail look like Steve? How do we tell him? How do we tell him?
Are kind of common across these different types of conditions, then I think it's fine to label yourself as neurodivergent.
Right on.
I need to research strokes. Yeah. I don't think I've ever had a stroke in my life. I have had instances where I have passed out before. That's Showa. Shut up.
I like what you were saying. What I'm hearing you say, at least certainly in the beginning of that, is it's less about difference and more about the same sort of diversity that is part of human diversity, right? Like in a way, when you think of neurodiversity, it's like biodiversity. This is a function of the human condition. There is diversity, right? So of course there is neurodiversity.
Yeah, that's another thing too, because it's like, we often talk about, how like people see people through like race and gender and like also just sexuality and like how that sort of defines a person, and like brain conditions are also like part of the same. It's just not the physical part. It's there. It's just not more so the visual part. It's more so just like the acting and the physical part that sort of like causes people to see you a certain way.
Right.
I do just want to say one thing. I think that a lot of times people will take that diversity thing and kind of run with it and say, oh, it's not a disability, then
Yeah.
everyone's a little autistic or things like that. But it also can be very disabling because of the social structures that we have in our world.
What are some ways in which it might actually be a strength, like in school or in work or in a relationship or something?
One of the big things is because you can think differently, because you're neurodivergent, you can be really creative oftentimes. So a lot of neurodivergent people
Yes.
find that they really excel at creative things like the arts or being organized and following a routine, and they can be really good at things like programming because of that.
Coding mentioned, baby. Coding mentioned. Yeah, no, like, I very much relate to that experience 100%. Like, I was just trying to bleed creativity no matter where I could, even if it wasn't like following the rules beat for beat. So say for example, right, when I was in elementary school, there was an art class that I would take like every Thursday, and in my mind, I was just sort of like, let whatever comes out of my mind, just put it on the canvas pretty much. And it's like, in my case, it's just like, I would hardly ever pay attention to what I was supposed to be doing in that class. I would just come up with all these random Mario Party boards that I would like draw on like paper, and I would like bring them home and like try and mimic them. Yeah, it was really really cool to me. And also, like, I remember like when I would play like Super Smash Bros. Brawl a lot back in the day. I was obsessed with the stage builder mode in particular. I don't really do stuff like that these days, where it's just like, oh, I make my own stage. I barely play stuff like Mario Maker. I don't really do stage builder and Smash these days, just because it's just like, for me, it's just way too tedious to just sort of like come up with a really cool idea. But back then, I would just let my mind flow and just figure out like what sort of concepts I could come up with given the limitations I was working with. I always imagined I was in the thing I was watching when it comes to shows I watch, how that would go. I think a lot of us did. Like, I imagine, like, where would I be if I was in this specific video game? I would always talk about with my brother about, like, oh, what world in, like, Kingdom Hearts, for example, would you be in? Or just trying to be like, what team would you raise in the Pokemon world and stuff like that. I don't like Mario Maker anymore. I rarely ever play it these days. I'm about to be 21. I'm still working about myself as an autistic person. Ever since I was 4, I felt the same way as you do. Yeah, I feel like a lot of us can relate to that.
Is there sort of a dynamic of trade-off involved in that? If there's, a hyper focus and a hyper utility in one area, does that ever mean there's a deficit somewhere else?
I'd say that one of the biggest problems with hyperfocus is that it can it doesn't necessarily create deficits, but it can create problems in social relationships. If you're, really excited and enthusiastic about something, you're really into it, you want to talk about it a lot to someone. I'm someone who's a big talker, but they're just not interested, they're
Yes.
like very bored, and, they're like, oh my gosh, this person is still talking about this.
Yes. I remember feeling this all too well. Because when I was little, back then, my world was only video games. It was basically that. I would bring it up in every sort of situation I could, because I was just that excited to talk about them, whether it be about Mario or Sonic or Pokemon or anything that I was playing. I was just like, I want to talk to people about that. Even in like the most random conversations where just like people are talking about something unrelated. I'm just like, so here's this thing in Pokemon that I think is like really freaking cool. And even if like they were not interested, I remember my dad was just sort of groaning whenever I would just pivot the conversation into that sort of thing. I'm obviously, of course, a lot more well-rounded these days. I'm able to like understand where someone else is in a conversation and focus on that. And like if something is like video game related, yeah, I will talk about that if someone's interested, or like teach them about something if like they're curious and everything. But just like obviously I'm not going to bother people about that if like they don't really care about that. It's sort of like, I think that's sort of a reason why I even got into YouTubing in the first place, because I've been doing this since like 2010, and I was just sort of like, hey, I love video games. I want to share my passion of video games with the world, and so I did just that. And somehow I found an audience for it, and like, thank you for sticking around. Whether you're new or old, I really appreciate it. But yeah, I feel like, a lot of people like who are like me just feel like they want to be heard in some way, even if someone isn't interested or someone isn't like won't really get it or some way, but just wants to see you happy and everything. I think a lot of us can relate to that. 2010, yeah, no, I've been doing YouTube before some of you were even born. You're getting at school tonight, little gup.
That can make it difficult to form relationships, and that's often a response that neurodivergent people often receive. Another thing is if you're, too into something, it can mean, you have an aspect of perfectionism. So maybe you're, really detail oriented. You're like, I want to find all of the research about this area for this project and get it perfect. But then it's hard to meet deadlines and things like that.
I was sort of like either one way or the other when it came to that sort of thing. It's either like, oh, I want to do as much research into this thing as possible in order to like give the best possible performance I possibly can give, or I'm just gonna be like, if it's something I'm not that interested in, I'm just gonna be like, I'm gonna do the bare minimum here and just hope I scrape by, which I did, thankfully enough. But yeah, it really just depends on what it is.
Oh yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, I live off grid in a house halfway up a mountain. I am an introvert's introvert. And it does feel at times. It's not that I don't prefer to be around people. It's that I cannot. That there are times where functioning around people would be not really an option almost.
I feel like for me, it just sort of depends. Where it's just like, I feel like I would have definitely called myself an introvert when I was much younger. Just because, sometimes I would just be really shy around people. Because, like, I would talk with friends and everything, but just sort of like, especially if it wasn't like someone I knew personally, sometimes I would just be scared to talk with them. I feel like it really did hit me in my high school years a lot. Whereas these days, I'm kind of like the opposite. Where it's like, oh, not to say I don't have introverted tendencies. Like, sometimes I need that alone time to, like, refresh my mind and everything. Or if I'm going through, like, something regarding my mental health. But these days, I'm glad to, like, talk with a lot of people about lots and lots of different things. And just sort of connect and just try to find balance in some way. Just sort of get to know people. I think that's one of the beauties of life. In fact, I think if you're going to be a live streamer in any way, you kind of have to be a little bit extroverted, or else you're going to fall into a cocoon and you're not really going to do well when people are talking to you in a certain way. I was introverted until I was 19, then broke that shell. That's good. I just went up to people and say, hi, how you doing? That's the big thing. It's sort of like meeting people at their level, asking questions and everything, finding a way to connect. I think that's really friggin' important.
It's hard to describe, but I feel like you know what I'm talking about.
I do, and I think this is really common for neurodivergent people. So it's something, they call it autistic burnout for autism. But a lot of it's because, I don't know, maybe you can relate to this, or maybe people at home can relate to this. It's like when you're interacting with people, you can't always be fully yourself, right? Maybe you can think of a situation where you've had to kind of perform for people, like you're meeting a partner's parents for the first time, or you're at an interview, or you're a guest on a podcast.
In my case, yes and no. Because it's like, it really depends on the context and everything. Like, say, like, if you were a chatter in my stream, I expect people, or like, if you're a guest that's coming on my stream, I expect people to play by my own rules and respect my personal boundaries and, just sort of meet me at the level that I want the stream to be. If I'm on someone else's stream, then totally fine. I will play by their rules, and I will act with however they want me to. Not to the extent where, like, I'm not allowed to be myself. If it reached a point where it's just, like, I'm not allowed to be myself, I wouldn't be on their stream anymore. It's as simple as that. But just, like, setting boundaries is, like, it's a very difficult thing for a lot of people to process. Like, In my case, I would say if I'm meeting a person for the first time, and I try my best to approach myself at a relatively standard level, where it's just like, hi, how are you? We talk about interests a little bit, sort of like do like a test to sort of see like how well we could connect on a certain subject, and then we can get more into the wild stuff depending on if the connection ends up hitting off. I think starting at a base level and then progressing more and more depending on how the relationship goes is really nice. But when it feels like you can't really be yourself, it always feels awkward. I know I feel that way around some of my I won't name any names, but sometimes I'll visit family. I'm just sort of like, I don't know. I'm checking now this one, but yeah, it really depends on the circle.
So, you feel like you have to be your best version of yourself.
Yeah.
Neurodivergent people feel like that pretty much like all the time in all of their interactions. They're taught to like hide who they are. It's called masking.
Yeah, tell me about masking.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a sometimes conscious, sometimes just automatic response to a lot of the stigma and discrimination and social challenges that neurodivergent, especially autistic people face. So they might, make an effort to sit up straight, change the tone and volume of their voice. They might have like a script that they follow in conversations to make it more comfortable for them. They're basically altering their social kind of abilities and social performance to better fit in and gain acceptance. Like I said, it can be completely non-conscious, though.
Like, for me, that was a big case. Going back to high school again, I definitely felt pretty insecure about, like, me liking Nintendo and everything, where it's just sort of like I wouldn't talk about it with people anymore. Especially during the Wii U and 3DS era, where it was just really freaking uncool to be considered like a Nintendo fan. To be fair, it was always kind of considered uncool to be a Nintendo fan. And so sort of like, I would just try to be like, I'm just going to do my job. Simple as that. I can't let anyone know about this in particular. I'm just going to keep to myself about it, stay in my own space. I won't bother connecting with anyone about that. I just going to do my maths, leave it at that. Whereas nowadays, I'm just like, I mean, look at the shelf behind me. It's going to be filled with a lot more stuff since I just moved in here a little while ago. And like, I still want to add more stuff. Yes, I have a lot of Nintendo merchandise, okay? Hey, if you hate me for that, oh freaking well. And yes, I've never played Metroid. Personally, I was more of a PlayStation guy than a Nintendo fan, even though I had the Wii and 3DS. That was sort of like, we had all the consoles back in the day. Like, I had the PS2, Xbox, and the GameCube. Well, my brother and I, we had all that. And then we had the Wii and 360. And then the Wii U and PS4. And now my brother has a Switch 2 and a Xbox Series S. I was the Sonic guy until freshman. Yep, pure sign of autism right there. I had no real friends besides the classmates. I rarely hang out with friends. Yeah, I think a lot of people who are like me sort of felt in the I have no friends sort of thing. Or just like I felt that way for the longest time. For me, it was just sort of a matter of like, oh, I find it really hard to reach out to people, which is sort of the problem. Wii U mentioned I've been... Oh my god, was it what? Shut up. Shut up. Your era of Nintendo is dead, okay? Alright? Iwata deceased. Reggie retired. We're in the good era now. We got Kirby Air Riders, okay? Meet me in City Trial, okay? I will show you that my era is better than your era, okay? Okay. Nice to see you, dude. But yeah. So let's get back into it. I said Sonic Forces was better than Mario Odyssey. My brother in Christ, I hope that you turned around, because otherwise I'd probably have to ban you from the stream. Also, hi, Neo. To catch up anyone on what's going on, for those who don't know what we're doing here, it's Autism Acceptance Month. I wanted to do a stream to sort of talk about that a little bit. And so, enjoying the discussion. Dude, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And so, I'm doing a stream where we're watching a podcast episode, Alive with Steve Burns. Steve was the host of the famous children's show Blue's Clues from back in the day. He's doing a podcast talking about more so issues adults go through, whether it be about money, death, critical thinking, anything in between, that a lot of people can connect with. He made an episode about neurodivergence a few months ago that I never got around to watching, and we're sort of discussing that today. I wish he had a charity stream next time. I would love to do a charity stream at some point. The problem is, I don't think my audience is big enough to the point where I can actually make a bit of an impact about that. Maybe next year, if this channel, my main channel, grows to a point where I can probably do that, that'd be pretty freaking cool. But for now, I think having a discussion about this is like the best thing I can do about it for now.
But it can lead to a lot of challenges, right? It's exhausting, not being able to be yourself around people.
Oh my goodness. I mean, neurotypical, neurodivergent, I think everyone can relate to the weight of that feeling,
Yeah, exactly.
Why does it seem like diagnoses are rising so fast? Is it because that it is more common, or is it because there's more focus on it?
I'm sure she's gonna answer it very effectively, but I think it is just because science has evolved so much in terms of like electricity and medicine and everything that you're able to get like diagnosis with things like much more quickly. I mean, it's how like people can like detect cancer much earlier than people were able to do before. And as much as we hate on like AI and everything, it has been used very effectively to like be able to scan the cells of a person, to be able to determine like things that are wrong with them like very, very effectively and easily. And I think that is a great use of AI right there. But I'm sure she's going to provide a really solid answer to this.
We do see that, diagnoses are rising. In large part, this is really because we've gotten much better at diagnosing people.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think we've gotten better at detecting autism earlier, so they can do it at like 2 to 3 years of age pretty reliably now.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what I was saying. Yeah, because I was diagnosed when I was only like 2 years old, right? And that's what explained a lot towards my parents, and also like the development of. I'm sure I'll save this for later because I'm sure they're going to talk about it at some point. Let's see, how stigma affects diagnosis, queerness. Okay, double empathy. So I'm sure there's going to be talks about it eventually, but yeah.
We're also getting better at diagnosing it in populations that, don't fit the kind of standard stereotypical model. So
Like what? Like
it was frequently white males, like little boys. There used to be a 4-to-1 gender ratio. And then autistic people of color, a lot of people of color have been misdiagnosed as having like behavioral conditions first. And then they later go on to get an autism diagnosis. They've also made some changes around the diagnosis of autism. So there used to be separate conditions, like maybe you've heard of Asperger's syndrome.
Yes, Asperger's. I know that. That term was thrown around a lot. I don't think I can relate to that, but like I know a lot of students, because I was in special needs classes in my middle school and high school. I knew a lot of students with Asperger's in particular, and it was really hard to connect with them, just because whether it be like Asperger's or Down syndrome in particular, it was much harder for me to connect with those people just because their mental conditions were much more severe than me. And admittedly, I feel like that was sort of some internalized ableism within myself. Where it's just like, I can't meet these people at their level, and therefore I kind of saw them as like lesser than me. I'm obviously not going to name any names because I'm talking about some of my classmates here, and like majority of them were fine people. It was just like, whether it be like stims or anything like that, it really did get on my nerves back in the day. But it's just sort of like, that's just sort of their condition. You can't really do much about that.
that's now under this umbrella of autism, but until 2013, it was a separate diagnosis.
If you're wondering what was skipped, it's a sponsored segment, and it's a BetterHelp sponsored segment, so that's how you know. That's how you know it's worth skipping.
Tell me more about that, about why girls in particular and people of color so often get missed in their diagnosis until later in life. What's that about?
Yeah, so
Yeah, BetterHelp. Yeah, it was. Yeah, BetterHelp is more so like. I think Steve took it for like a while. I don't think he does it nowadays. I think he switched to like doing other sponsors. But I think at the start of this podcast, he had to deal with BetterHelp. I don't think he did much research into it. But yeah, for those who don't know, yeah, BetterHelp, like a lot of people got sponsored by them back in the day. Some still do now, or it's just like online therapy. The problem with that service is a lot of the people they get aren't licensed therapists and they get really bad advice. And I heard some people even monitor all the calls. And it's just like, at that point, just take regular therapy, dude. So like, I don't think he takes it anymore. I could be wrong on that, but I'm glad that he seems to have heard about some of the feedback, because I told him about like when I watched the first episode when that came out. Yeah, it's not a great service. I don't think I ever seen a sponsor for Autism Speaks in particular. Granted, I don't know if there might be. I haven't seen anything about that, but I wouldn't know. But yeah, Autism Speaks is definitely something you want to stay away from as well.
a lot of research has shown that a lot of this can be attributed to stigma, just both kind of stereotypes about what autism looks like, and then also some bias in providers.
What biases are you talking about specifically?
There's a bias about like Black families, so they were making judgments on family structures, like maybe both parents are working and the kids being taken care of in daycare or things like that, or they're not in like a traditional preschool, things like that, or the provider kind of making judgments about behaviors that might be typical for Black children versus white children. There was another study.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, let me make it clear, I'm white, so obviously I cannot relate to the Black experience, like, at all. But yeah, unfortunately, I do still see that stigma a lot, where just, like, whatever people notice from, like, some sort of, like, Black stereotype they see, they think, like, all Black people, or, like, all Hispanic people, or all Asian people fit that archetype, when that's not always the case. Obviously, it's all good shooting films. Obviously, I feel like there is a connection, because, like, if you see someone who's the same race or same gender as you, obviously I think you can be able to connect more and get, like, a better understanding that way. But yeah, unfortunately, when you see someone who, like, is of a different race than you, or a different gender than you, or even if you are, like, that same gender or, like, race, and you sort of internalize thoughts in your mind, you might, it might cause you to feel a certain way about it, even if it's not right, and it's kind of a shame.
Where they kind of, it wasn't actual kids, but they gave a description of like behaviors that were atypical, and they asked students to like identify a diagnosis. When they labeled the kid as white, the students were more likely to say that kid was autistic, versus if the kid was labeled as Black, students usually attributed it to like, it's called oppositional defiant disorder, or like behavioral conditions.
What is oppositional defiance disorder?
I would hope we've progressed to a point where we're gonna diagnose people more equally these days.
Yeah, so that's a disorder that's diagnosed often in childhood, and it's really, kind of having these defiant behaviors. So it's, kind of doing not what you're told, or these externalizing, acting out types of behaviors. So it's like kids who might be very resistant in nature, or kids who might have hitting and behaviors like that.
So I want to be clear.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had to worry about fighting in the schools that I was in. It was more so just verbal stuff rather than like actual physical stuff, where like the bullying. Granted, I never really was bullied much back in school. It was more so just internalization in my mind. The only time I think I've actually gotten hurt in school was like one of my friends at the time. We were just running around and we accidentally bonked into each other's skulls, and we were both like crying on the floor at the playground. It it was wild. It was wild.
Clear. So
there's that.
this paper determined or found that later in life, someone who might have been dismissed as having, oppositional defiance disorder actually met the criteria for autism.
Yes, there
what
have
you're
been several studies that have shown that, black children are more likely to have more diagnoses before reaching the autism diagnosis as kind of their final diagnosis, more time to reach an autism diagnosis, so they're diagnosed at a later age, and then, more misdiagnoses at first, so things like ADHD or behavioral difficulties.
That does sound like bias.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, that's just, and this is something I learned in college too. Unfortunately, racial bias is still like, a very prominent thing. It's even, if it's internalized out a lot of us. I took a quiz about it. It's like, I'm not perfect in it either. I don't think any of us are going to find like that perfect balance or anything, but more so just, it's just important to meet people at their level regardless of where they come from. That's what's
So
important.
that's kind of why we talk about that. For girls, it can be a little more complicated, and again, this can also relate to people of color and stuff. We think that girls might mask more, so
I read that.
maybe they're able to fly under the radar. Yeah, so that can be a thing. Maybe doctors aren't as good at recognizing when someone's masking. That's often also the case with like Black autistic people. They're taught to mask and conceal their behaviors to protect themselves. So that can make it harder. On top of these biases, just some of these differences in what a behavior might look like in these assessments.
I wonder if young girls are sort of asked to mask anyway, so they might be good maskers.
I think it's, again, it's just a matter of stereotypes preventing people from actually exploring themselves, and that's a shame. It's a shame. I never really had much bullying experience in school and more internalized feelings, as I have a couple of examples. Yeah, same.
Yeah, and when we look at autistic girls, we do see like, first of all, girls are kind of socialized to play with toys like dolls and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
those are some of the tools we use in the like autism diagnostic assessment that seems like the gold standard. It's called the ADOS. So maybe they're more likely to be interested in those social toys, or
I think that is sort of conditioned for all of us, but even then, I'd say like neurodivergent people tend to sort of like bleed in between those lines a little bit. Like I would play with like Hot Wheels and stuff like perfectly fine as a your standard male kid. But we also had like this Lilith's Pet Shop board game, if anyone remembers Lilith's Pet Shop. And like I think that was more associated with girls at the time. The crossover between like specified gender interests, it never really crossed over with me that much, but there are exceptions I feel like a lot of us can relate to.
or another study showed that autistic girls often have interests that are like more typical, but they're just really intense in nature, whereas autistic boys might be more interested in kind of more obscure types of things.
Interesting. Do queer and autistic identities overlap in similar ways? That are meaningful for belonging, support, and everything else.
This is gonna be a fascinating one for me, in particular, just because like I am very much a straight guy in every sense of the word, but a lot of the LGBT people that I have talked to and interacted with are autistic in their own way, and so I think it's just a matter of like, again, I'm not a specialist in this field. I'm not a psychologist or anything. Take what I say with a grain of salt. I feel like with how autistic people tend to like think about a lot of things to the point of like overthinking, overstimulation, and everything, it sort of gives LGBT autistic people the opportunity to like look inside themselves a lot more to see like what they really like, what they don't like, and everything. And so, yeah, I think that's part of it, but we'll see what Desiree has
Yeah,
to say.
so this unfortunately is an area that's like very much pretty new in research. There wasn't a lot of focus on LGBTQ plus autistic people. You know, they were kind of just, like I said, autism research was very like homogenous for a while.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that's really interesting that's come out of it is that a lot more autistic people are transgender or non-binary compared to the general population.
Really?
And yeah, so even
Yeah.
within people who I've worked with in my studies, I don't aim to recruit for that, but in my dissertation, like I want to say like a close to a third of people identified as non-binary, and there's a theory that maybe autistic people don't perceive these gender norms in the same way because
Oh.
of their differences in thinking. It might be something like that. It might, we haven't really, I think the research is just kind of getting started in it, and trying to figure this out. But yeah, a lot of autistic people do identify as trans or non-binary.
Yeah, I think, again, it is just sort of a matter of, like, people just taking the time in their heads to just sort of explore themselves, like, a little bit more. Like, I'm just gonna be blatantly honest with all of you. I don't think I've told anyone this in particular, including my own family. There have been times in the past where, I would sort of, like, think inside my head where it's just like, would I consider myself on, like, the opposite end? Do I identify more as, like, trans? Would I want to be, like, a woman myself? Just out of, like, the blank curiosity of, like, that experience, or just, ever since I even found out what transgender even was back in, like, I think 2014 or something. But nowadays, like, I mean, I basically have accepted myself for who I am, and, obviously the experiences can be very different for a lot of people, but I feel like for neurodivergent people, they have that opportunity to, like, think, like, outside of the box of what is considered normal and, like, look internally a lot more. Of course, depends on the person, obviously, but that's the way I see it.
That is, I would love to read about that. That is really interesting research.
Yeah.
So they're thinking perhaps they don't perceive gender in the same way, and then
Yeah.
also don't apply that perception to themselves.
I think we find a similar thing for like being asexual or aromantic. That's also higher prevalence for neurodivergent people. So
Yeah, some people just don't want to deal with the more sexual context regarding around, like, love and romance, and totally cool, totally fair.
maybe they also
I mean, I'm someone who will probably, like, I'm someone who I'm probably not gonna ever go on my way to have sex myself until marriage, and, I'm proud of that for myself.
it could be a brain thing. It could be kind of a combination of like brain and like socialization. There's not enough research really to say what the cause of this is. We're just, seeing this consistent pattern of, different ways of thinking about things like gender and sexuality in autistic people.
You said asexual and aromantic. What is the distinction between those two?
So when we think about asexuality, that's really referring to sexual desire. So, it's not about sexual behaviors. Some asexual people aren't sexually attracted to people. They don't form those sexual attractions. Some people call themselves like demisexual. So that means that they only form, these, again, sexual attractions to certain people, like once they've known them a little better. In terms of aromantic, that's, again, that kind of like attachment behavior. So when you're in a romantic relationship, I think the big way to distinguish this is, you can think of like casual hookups. That would be like sexuality, sexual behaviors, sexual attraction. Whereas like a romantic relationship, that would be, that romanticism. You can have a relationship, a very successful relationship with someone that's romantic, where you don't engage in sex or sexual behaviors for
I
whatever
see.
reason. Just
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of the way I would want to see, like, my own relationship with someone. Whereas, like, I'm more interested in, like, I'm not gonna sit here and act like looks aren't part of, like, my interest in a person. I'm not gonna say that for a second. Because at the end of the day, some women really, really do be gorgeous. I'm just saying. But more so, like, I'm more interested in, like, getting to know someone, like, as, like, a friend, bonding over specific interests, like getting to know, like, getting to like appreciate someone as like a close friend, and then we can get to posing the bigger questions and everything. That's sort of how I approach relationships.
It's like you can have sex without that romantic attachment.
Yes, I was about to ask if that was possible. Asking for a friend, of course. But
Shut up, Steve.
what is the double empathy problem? This is something that I hear a lot about in this conversation.
Double empathy. I'm not familiar with this one. I'm curious.
When we look at research, there are a lot of studies looking at interactions between autistic and non-autistic people and comparing them to interactions between, just two autistic people or two non-autistic people. And interestingly, a lot of this research shows that, when you have two autistic people, they don't have a lot of these difficulties in their interactions. They can understand each other better, understand what they're saying, what they're expressing, and they get along a little better in these interactions. They rate them pretty positively. If autistic people just had broad social deficits, you wouldn't expect that, right? You'd expect two autistic people to, have a really poor interaction, and that's not what we're seeing in research. Many times these two autistic people get along, just as well as two non-autistic people and can communicate just as effectively. So the double empathy problem is really saying that it's not just autistic people having trouble understanding and empathizing with non-autistic people. It's a two-sided thing. Non-autistic people also have trouble, understanding and interpreting autistic communication.
I think it's like, if you connect with someone more on like a psychological level, the easier it will be to like get along with them. And like I said, there is that internalized ableism within me, or at least it was at the time in high school when I was in those special needs classes with the folks that have way more severe like autism or disabilities than me, where it's just like it was hard to connect on that level. But I'm sure for them it's easier to connect with people on their level, and that's great and everything. But yeah, I think it's just, the psychological differences, I think, can definitely help make or break a relationship for a lot of people out there.
Right. So how can we do that? How can we better interpret and understand the autistic community?
I think the biggest thing is just getting to know and kind of understand autistic people around you. So we have some research, and we've looked at how people kind of perceive autistic people, like the stereotypes they have. We call it like first impressions. We just show a 10-second video of autistic people. Sometimes we don't even say that they're autistic. We ask people, what do you think of this person? Like, would you hang out with them? Those types of things. And we
in my case, it takes a while for people to realize that I am on the spectrum, because of the way that I present myself. But yeah, I think it is definitely a matter of just get to know someone. Just get to know someone. If you're unfamiliar with someone, just talk with someone. Ask questions, provided they're okay with that, obviously, and just sort of like meet someone at their level. Don't talk down to them. And just sort of like get to know someone. Ask them like, how do they perceive things? Like, what are they specifically interested in? That's the best way to like get to know anyone, that I would say, from my own experience.
We find that people who have more knowledge about autism and also have, more firsthand experience with autistic people, both of those things are associated with rating autistic people better. So I think just, being able to, whether you have autistic friends or, you follow people who are autistic online, you can learn to understand them just like you can, learn to understand how your friend from a different culture might express themselves differently. So I think that social contact and, interacting with and learning from and listening to autistic people is a really important component of that.
Yeah.
You can also tell if they're autistic if they like Sonic. I'm sorry.
That's what I've found in my lived experience. I have some autistic friends. I think we all do. And that's what I found. It's just like, it's just a slightly different code. I get it.
Especially when you consider especially when you consider how often diagnoses are. I think the last time I checked, I think 1 in every 35 people. I could be getting the math wrong a little bit. I think every 1 in 35 people are diagnosed with autism. or some sort of neurodivergence in some way. So it's a lot more common than you would think.
You know,
Yeah.
and listening has been a big part of that.
Yeah.
So, why do you think people still assume that autism means lack of empathy?
One thing that I found was really common was that people often learned about autism from, like TV shows and things like that. And I think if you think about autistic characters that are represented, it's often like a very small range of different people. There's much more diversity in actual autistic people. So,
Yeah, media depictions have never exactly been the greatest in the world. Um, and I think that does sort of internalize some feelings, even in doctors themselves and everything. Where it's just like, I remember when I was diagnosed, like the doctor told my parents, like, I'd never be able to speak with my parents. I'd never be able to hold down a job. I'd never even be able to tell my mother that I love her. And safe to say, all that was basically proven wrong. We autistic people are everywhere, even in the walls. Real. Yeah, if you invade my walls, I'm burning down this entire building. I'm telling you now. But yeah, just like yeah, media depictions, especially when they hire people that aren't even diagnosed either, tend to just go towards the more extreme side of the spectrum without actually and sort of gives people a false narrative that like, oh, all autistic people can get like meltdowns really easily, or all autistic people are like, oh, they're gonna be really, really good in like science or something, and like everything. Like there's this popular show called The Good Doctor, that and my mom in particular actually really does like that show. The main character has some form of autism, even though they aren't the actor doesn't have autism, and they have a very extreme way of doing that. Acting like a really, really smart science guy, but tends to throw tantrums a lot. I'm sure there was that meme that circulated a couple years ago where the guy is just going, I am a surgeon. Yeah, some of you might remember that one. What comes to mind is Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. Oh, I cannot stand the Big Bang Theory. I tried watching it. It burns my soul. Yeah, and so, and even my mom, who does think that The Good Doctor is a good show, she has directly told me that, yeah, that main character is not good representation at all. Meanwhile, I think of a movie that I watched a few years ago that actually did a good job at, like, okay, maybe this isn't autism specifically, but actually doing a good job representing neurodivergence in a really meaningful way. There was a movie I saw for a class that I was a part of. I had to write like a movie review. I watched this movie called The Peanut Butter Falcon, and it's about a guy with Down syndrome. And the main actor actually has Down syndrome, and he essentially just wants to like be a wrestler of some kind, and he's like in this facility which with other people that are just all sorts of weird people in there, and so he escapes to try and like make his dream come true. And so he ends up running into this guy who's played by Shia LaBeouf, and the two end up, despite Shia's character being a really big tool at the start, they end up getting stuck with each other, and they end up bonding in a really nice way. And I think it does, and I think that movie does a brilliant job at like showing proper Down syndrome representation in a really beautiful way that offers hope, while also not downplaying the issues that people with Down syndrome tend to go through. I think it's a really brilliant movie that's worth a watch. So I think it is just a matter of like, especially with how a lot certain people with autism like to behave and hyperfixate and stuff. A lot of people just think it's easier to just hire a person who's neurotypical to like be in the role and just do the job, and it's just like usually it falls flat on its face. what's the movie called again? The Peanut Butter Falcon. I don't know if it's on any streaming services anymore. I watched it on Hulu when I did back in, like, what, 2020, 2021? Let me see here. Yeah, let me check Letterboxd, actually, to see if it's on... Oh, wait, no, I think it is... No. Oh, boy, no, I think it's only on real time, sadly. Let me double check, real quick. Yeah, because Letterboxd tends to do a good job of, like, where you can find, something. It's only on Cinemax. Okay, it's only streaming on Cinemax. Yeah, I watched it on Hulu back in the day. Yeah. But yeah, I would definitely say it's worth checking out. I'm sorry, I'm brain farting right here. Yeah, I have the movie on Blu-ray, actually. It's a really freaking good time. And also really funny, too, if you like that sort of thing. I remember hearing that SpongeBob is autistic as well. I could see it.
You often see this
Sorry, I missed your message, shooting. I know autistic traits have different bias when it comes to person to person, but I feel like the representation is more surface level than actually accurately depicting autism. Yeah, definitely. And I feel like as we continue on with, like, the future of media within the next few decades, we're going to see a better job at actually representing people like that properly. We're already seeing that with, like, LGBT representation. I think we're going to get there with autism eventually.
kind of like Asperger's phenotype where it's like a white guy who's like really socially awkward but like really smart and talented. So, common ones are like Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, she literally mentions Big Bang Theory. Is she gonna mention The Good Doctor as well?
And The Good Doctor.
Yeah, literally. I paused way too early. No, like, literally. She's basically speaking what I just said right there. We're on the same wavelength. Oh my gosh, I need to have a conversation with her, honestly.
Or you can see that savant type of thing, where people really struggle with the social connection, like Rain Man, which is it's been actually really harmful stereotype for many autistic people to overcome. So,
Or is that one?
It's been
Rain Man. I'm not familiar with Rain Man at all. I know Rayman, but not Rain Man. There's the video game reference. Rain Man. Let me search this up. Okay. Let me see here. Alright, okay. Let me see here. Okay, Rain Man. So this is a comedy drama film. Let me see here. Let me check the Wikipedia page on this one real quick. Rain Man is a 1988 American road comedy drama film. It tells the story of abrasive and selfish wheeler-dealer Charlie Babbitt, played by Tom Cruise, who discovers that his estranged father has died and bequeathed, I think that's how you pronounce it, his multi-million-dollar estate to his other son, Raymond, played by Dustin Hoffman, an autistic savant of whose existence Charlie was unaware. I'm not familiar with this movie at all, actually. Let me see here. Apparently it's gotten really good reviews. Let me check the Rotten Tomatoes score real quick. Shut up, bad. It's apparently really acclaimed, so I'm curious what exactly is, like, the poor representation on this movie's part. I imagine it might just be, the casting not representing autism properly. That might have to do with it. I've watched your last few videos, and I really like your content, and just the vibe of yourself, and then the videos is very cozy. I unsubscribed from Topic Carlo and thought I was one of the only ones that thought was going crazy. It's all good, man. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know. I hope Arlo gets back on his feet eventually. Because he is a good channel when he talks about stuff that he is passionate about, but when it's just like, oh, I'm doing this just because it's news and everything, it just sort of... It's unfortunate. Really. It really is.
Theory, or the guy in The Good Doctor, or you can see that savant type of thing,
Yeah.
where people really struggle with the social connection, like Rain Man, which is it's been actually a really harmful stereotype for many autistic people to overcome. So I think that's one of the problems. Autistic people have often been portrayed as like aloof and cold, when in reality, many autistic people avoid interactions because they've faced so much discrimination and bullying and things like that, and have had so many negative experiences. So they might withdraw a little bit, be hesitant to form some of these interactions.
Yeah, I don't. For me, the very few bits of bullying I got was never really from like the autism. It was more so just like my eccentric personality, because I tend to be a very sarcastic person. I tend to be, and sometimes it rubs some people the wrong way. And it was just like, okay.
But it doesn't mean they don't want friends.
Right. And I'm sure that just, creates more masking and more anxiety, and it just creates that cycle
Yep.
back and forth because of the double empathy problem going over around and around.
Yep.
Do you think the stigma is shrinking, or is it just kind of morphing into subtler forms?
I think that
Based on the anti-woke grifters I was talking about in that friggin' grifters video, I don't think so, sadly.
especially recently, we've had
Granted, that's just, terminally online talking. I'm sure in the real world, where those people would likely get, I'm gonna be nice, laughed at, I'll just say that. I imagine, people, I don't think it's more so people are against autistic people, more so they just don't really understand it. It's not like how there's like active, like, maybe I'm not looking in the right places. It's not like there's active hatred towards autistic people existing, whether it be like in the same way that, like, LGBT people or Jewish people have to face like discrimination a lot of the time, sadly. But it's more so like, I think, just people not really understanding autistic people, and just sort of not exactly doing the best job accommodating for them. I think that's what it is. Even if you're not autistic, some of the older generation will talk about the Gen Z stare, when we could just be taking a mental break in real time. Yeah, that's sort of me in some cases.
had a lot of efforts to increase autism awareness, and that's been really effective. So a lot of people know what autism is, at least on a very basic level.
Yeah, I'd
But we
say so.
certainly have a ways to go. There have been especially many very recent dialogues about autism that are very dangerous and harmful, saying things like that autistic people can never do, like all of these things.
I mean, I was talking about that earlier with like the doctor, who like was telling my parents all those things. So there is that.
Like they can never play baseball, they can never have a meaningful life. All that's very stigmatizing, and it's just like a vast overgeneralization. And it's also dangerous because it kind of says that a person's value is tied to their abilities, which I think is a really harmful notion. So
Yeah, I don't think it. Yeah, I don't think it's more so. I don't think it's more so bigotry. It just comes more so from a lack of understanding.
it's something we see a lot too. And I mean, the term for it is ableism, discrimination based on ability. And
Yeah.
that's still really common. We see it in the workplace, we see it in romantic relationships, friendships.
I mean, I think it's also just jobs in general. I think just the workplace, a lot of places not exactly accommodating for people with disabilities. Not in like a, oh, we don't want you in the workplace sort of way. More so we just don't know how to accommodate for you sort of way.
One of the biggest things we find consistently in our relationship is that non-autistic people are really reluctant to form relationships with autistic people. They have a
Yeah.
much reduced interest in
Again, that's only me with like talking about. Again, that's literally my experiences talking with people with much more severe autism than me.
that compared to, friendships with people with other conditions.
Why do you think that is?
I think part of it, is, again, these kind of misinterpretations of autistic communication. Oftentimes people might interpret an autistic person as being disinterested or awkward or things like that. And they're less interested in forming friends with them because of that. One interesting thing is that we only really see that for non-autistic people. If I show videos of autistic people to other autistic people, they'll still rate them as awkward, things like that, but they don't
Yeah.
have that reduced social interest, which suggests that, neurodivergent or especially autistic people might not use that, might not put as much weight on that when they're forming friends. It's like,
I think that is a matter of, like, being autistic, you can already sort of meet other autistic people at their level, whereas those that have neurotypical brains more so feel like there's a wildly different area compared to what I'm used to, and that's sort of like taboo territory for me. So I think that has to do with it.
I can be friends with someone who's awkward or things like that. That's not a barrier for us. Whereas it might be
Yeah, I think that also is just another thing too. Just some people just don't want to deal with imperfections, which is a shame, honestly.
a big barrier for a lot of, neurotypical people.
Yeah, a lot of it is about, seeing past your assumption of the cue that you're reading, I remember I was dating someone who had ADHD, and for a while I was like, this person is just being very rude, and I was misinterpreting a lot of stuff. And I was like, huh. And then I figured out what was going on, and we talked and we communicated, and it was cool.
Now, in terms of ADHD in particular, like, I have not been diagnosed with ADHD, so I can't not act like I'm an expert in that field. But yeah, from like what I can understand is just, yeah, people do end up thinking, perceiving things in a different way than even just standard, just regular autistic people, or like what's dubbed as ADHD people. It's just, so I think, yeah, it definitely is that strange barrier that's hard to cross for a lot of people. It really depends on the person and how they are as a character, if they do have autism or ADHD. Yeah, that's definitely another factor too.
But
Yeah.
but that was on me. I was making an assumption there.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic way of putting it. I think a lot of this research has come out showing, for my dissertation, I interviewed autistic people about their social experiences. And one thing that really came out of it was that people were very frequently misinterpreted. So autistic women said that people often said that they had like resting bitch face and thought that they were really angry and things like that all the time. Black autistic people said that they felt like they had to be really conscious of their behaviors so they weren't interpreted as aggressive or, lazy, or a lot of these stereotypes.
Yeah, again, yeah, stereotypes. Yeah, it's unfortunate that whether it be black people or like Hispanic or anything between, being locked into certain stereotypes, even from doctors and everything. Obviously, I have not experienced that, but unfortunately, yeah, I noticed that is a pretty common thing. It's a shame.
And then just in addition to that, a lot of autistic people just felt like people, even who were close to them, didn't understand them, their motives, their intentions.
And that's another sponsor skipped right there for Quince. I am not familiar with Quince, but at least it sounds better than BetterHelp.
Yeah, one thing you said that really struck me was this masking around policing. Because you don't want your behavior to be misinterpreted. You don't want to have a misinterpreted neurodivergent behavior compounding a bias in that moment. That does sound particularly fraught. So a lot of this sounds like it's on, or the double empathy problem, right? Which I think is really fascinating, means that both sides have to try,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and how can we accommodate and even advocate without alienating?
I'm aware of the self-ableism in the autism community. I even experienced some of that. But the last thing I want from people who express more traits is to take advantage of and manipulate. Yeah. I think it's more so like, how do I put this? Knowing what I do now, I would have definitely treated the people that I knew back in high school better. Actually knowing what they go through and dealing with things, whether or not they can control them, or just just trying to find that way to accommodate, regardless of like, not even like not even just in like disability versus non-disability, whether it be, a different race or a different gender, who may not have like the same sort of like stories or like, the hardships that you do or whatever. I think that's just, it's a tough bridge to cross. We like to act like, it's all about like, I don't see this, I don't see that. I just don't think that's true. I think a lot of, what we experience in life is dependent on a lot of those things, for the good and the bad. And trying to find that balance is really tricky for people that aren't in that, who are, who never really had those experiences. And I think that's why you see lots of like ableism or racism or like transphobia or anything in between, because they don't understand those perspectives. And like, whether or not they were taught in schools and everything, it's just like some people just don't really have that perspective, and it's unfortunate. I feel like this also just a failing of the education system in of itself.
Yeah, so I think that changes are needed, both on an individual level. I've talked a lot about increasing our understanding of autistic ways of communication, reducing our stigma towards autism, so being more accepting and accommodating. But I also think we need some structural changes to help autistic people, right? So one thing that's really helpful is like increased flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
So, being more flexible with your friends if maybe they're not feeling a social interaction, maybe they're not feeling like going out, maybe they're autistic or neurodivergent, they're just really burnt out, they'd rather stay in or just like have some time to themselves.
I definitely know that. Like, I will go out and have a good time just doing whatever, but sometimes I do need that alone time to sort of recharge or do my own personal project, whether it be YouTube videos or otherwise. But yeah, it's just accommodations are definitely very valuable for a lot of people, and it's definitely helped in the case of some of the jobs I've taken up over the years. I did take a couple of jobs in high school to help with my credits since I was falling behind on that. And the staff there did a really good job, like helping me keep focused and like being very just nice about like, here's what you're gonna do. This is very simple. Have at it. Yeah, I think especially in the workforce too. I think she's gonna mention this later, but like, yeah, in the workforce, some people specialize in a certain field that a neurotypical worker might not. It's a tough slope because I know they have traits that hinder on their communication skills, but I think overall wise emotions aren't facts and we need to have more patience in how they interact. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, it definitely is. That is a big thing too, where it's just like sometimes we let those feelings really overthrow just the truth of the matter. The critical thinking skills tend to get thrown out the window. And sometimes, it can be a case where it's just like someone will have like a temper tantrum or a meltdown, whether they're autistic or otherwise, and everything. And just like sometimes there's just not much that can be done about that. But yeah, again, meeting someone at their level and understanding them, asking questions, and trying to find the right balance between what will make them happy and will make the other person happy, I think is like the perfect way to go about it.
I think oftentimes we get labeled as flaky for canceling, and it can be tough, but having that flexibility. I also think just communicating your expectations socially. So, knowing, kind of laying out, being direct about what you're expecting of someone. Like, we had like a seminar here and we were kind of talking about like norms, social norms, and we were writing them out and we were saying like how many of these are actually necessary in a social interaction. And we realized like very few of them were actually necessary, but they were often things that are used to kind of stigmatize or exclude neurodivergent people. Like eye contact is a good one. Like,
Uh-huh.
it can be helpful for non-autistic neurotypical people to like read emotions from someone's eyes, but is that really necessary?
I mean, in my case with eye contact, I tend to look a little bit away from someone just because it tended to scare me if I was just looking directly at someone, uh, and they weren't like, all I saw was like their eyes and like their face wasn't really moving other than just, me staring at them. It's something I still struggle with to this day. I've gotten better at it, but it's just like, it's that internalized fear for me.
Listen to the words they're saying. In many cases, that'll tell you exactly what you need to know about how they're feeling. Ask them.
What would you say to a parent who's wondering how to prepare their child, their autistic child, to enter a world that often confuses diversity for disorder?
I think that this is a really tough thing for a lot of parents, especially because, autism is a spectrum and, some people's kids can have really high support needs where, they might require round the clock type of help with, daily living and different types of skills, a lot more support. Whereas, some people's kids may achieve independence and need less of that support. So
Yeah, definitely. My independence was definitely stunted a little bit from like, how I sort of acted back in the day. And yeah, some parents really aren't equipped to handle that sort of thing. And, they have to like, uh, there's certain barriers that they have to find their ways to work around. Like, for example, right, for me, I come from a very Christian household myself. My mom's far more dedicated of a Christian than me, and she was originally going to enroll my brother and I in a Catholic school back in the day for our education until it was found out that I had autism. And the Catholic school did not have any sort of like programs to help out like autistic or neurotypical individuals. So I ended up going through the typical grade system and trying to find, workarounds in that sort of way. And especially in the case of middle school and high school, I was in like the special needs classes, whereas with elementary, that wasn't really the case. And I would also take like therapy classes like outside of school to sort of like help my development in a number of ways. Like every Wednesday for a while, I would take like music therapy and horse therapy, actually. Both great experiences. I wouldn't trade those for the world. There's a part of me that actually wants to do horse therapy again because it was that enjoyable for me. But yeah, it's just like, yeah, for on the parent side, it's more so you have to find a way to be able to treat your child like they are a human being, like they are an equal. But again, trying to find accommodations for them that can help them grow in a way that is specific to them, that a neurotypical person, they'll just deal with what's thrown at them like quite fine. Whereas, will there be a horse episode in Leaf Haven? Never say never. Never say never. But yeah, I think, programs like that, I think definitely, especially specific programs to help certain people with independence rather than them just figuring out themselves, I think, that's really, really valuable.
Things can look very different for different parents of different autistic people, just like they can look, different for parents of neurotypical people, right? With that in mind, I think there are like three things that are really important for helping to prepare your autistic child for the world, and that's acceptance, advocacy, and love. So what I mean by acceptance is, accepting your child for who they are, especially who they are now, not who you hope they'll be in the future. I think parents can pretty commonly expect things of their kids or hope for things of their kids, but, I think just appreciating who they are now in the moment, they have value, they're your kids, so just, accepting them for who they are now.
Yeah, I think my parents, definitely more so my mom, but my dad to an extent as well, they definitely did a good job accepting me for who I was. Excuse me, despite the challenges that came with it, despite the strange things I would do that other kids wouldn't. Like my brother went through a much more typical progression of like phases in life compared to me. Where obviously, he would play with toys. Then he'd have like a bit of a. Maybe I shouldn't be going into detail because that's obviously like his perspective to call his own. But in my case, I'm mostly just I stuck to my path of like video games regardless, and my parents respected that. And I think that's really important to see in a child, autistic or otherwise. Meet them where they are, appreciate what they're doing, as long as they aren't going out of their way to hurt anyone or do anything illegal or anything. As long as they aren't hurting anyone or themselves, while also making sure that they still are pulling their own weight. That is the most valuable thing you can ever do for a child.
Now, kind of regardless again of that ability level or challenges they might face and things like that. Advocacy is also really important. So many parents have to advocate for their kid kind of throughout their life in school, getting them the supports they need.
Advocacy is definitely something that I know all too well. I still have my family helping out when it comes to like my medical information and everything, because sometimes I just look at those sheets and I'm just like, Dios mío, this is so much for me to handle. So it's appreciated all the same.
Something called an IEP in school that's really helpful for many disabled kids. Also things like, pushing your doctor to, get a certain support like therapy or something, or even just getting that initial autism diagnosis. If your kid has the ability, teaching them to advocate for themselves, right? That kind of thing.
My family and I were raised on sarcasm, so we didn't take anything too seriously on a conceptual level. That's always good. That's always really good. It's always nice when your parents, aren't super strict and take things too seriously, because like then there comes trauma, like family trauma as a result, and a lot of people will just leave and never talk to their parents again, like the second they turn 18, and like, which is unfortunate. So I'm glad, like, when a family is able to like, enjoy a bit of ribbing at each other, obviously, like, to a degree, obviously you don't want to push things to super far. I think that is important in order to like build trust within like the family, and it helps for the child to be able to talk with the parents about anything, and vice versa.
Teaching them to advocate for themselves, right?
Independence is still very important, though.
And then finally, I think love is pretty self-explanatory, right? But
yeah,
what I mean by that is just like giving your kid a space to know that they belong, they're valued, they're accepted. So as a neurodivergent kid, like, this was really helpful for me. I was a weird kid. Like, I got obsessed with Matt Damon for like 3 years. I was always doing
Matt
like
Damon's great. He's a great actor.
He's
a nice guy from Boston. He wrote Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
When he was younger than you, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I kind of felt this way. This is sort of embarrassing to admit. I kind of did. This wasn't a crush or anything. I did sort of feel this way about Adam Sandler movies for a time. Or I would watch a lot of the stuff he was in, whether it be friggin' bedtime stories, or grown-ups, or like Pixels and stuff like that. Not every movie, mind you, but it was just like I saw him on the cover, it was sort of an easy sell for me. Like Happy Gilmore, anger management, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, so I can relate in that regard.
You don't have to tell me. Like, I was obsessed with him to the point that I was like actively bullied for this. But
Really?
like, I was a weird kid. I'd say, yeah, but my parents were just like, whatever. And the point is, like, I was weird as a kid, and not in like a really cute way. Like, oftentimes in a way that got me picked on, or people thought I was like genuinely weird. But
yeah, for me it was just like, I don't think people saw me as weird, more so as like, I would do weird things a lot, but it's just like, nothing. I wouldn't say I did anything. For the most part, there were times where I did take it too far, merely. But most of the time, I would say, like, anytime I do something weird or strange, it was more so with, like, good intentions over anything. Just trying to have some fun.
Same.
I never felt that way with my parents. Oh, I'm sorry, and it's tough, right? Especially with other kids, because it's
I'll tell you, Desi,
I'm just being myself here.
Yeah, being bullied. I always say, being bullied when I was young, it's difficult for me to think of anything that was more formative in my life. And it still shapes my perceptions to this day. You know, I
Yeah.
am still aware of the way in which I was fired in that particular crucible. You know, it's
Yeah.
Crucible.
still it's had a profound impact, I think, on anyone who's experienced it.
Crucible. I did not know this part about Steve. That's wild. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's more so a matter of like, I'm not gonna say I will never feel a certain way, but more so, I've been on the internet long enough to know that most people are just a wash. I sort of just assume that everyone on the internet is a brain dead moron until proven otherwise. Like, I mean, literally a lot of the comments on like my previous videos sort of prove that. Just like people taking me in like a wrong way, people saying awful things about me. I just sort of laugh at it just because it's just like, I feel like people that go out of the way to say stuff about that, say stuff like that, it's just a lot more about that person than it does about me or you or anyone really. Unless you're like doing like particularly awful things, promoting like horrible ideologies and everything, it mostly is about that other person rather than you at the end of the day. So like with bullying, it's just sort of like I don't really take it seriously. Like for me it's more so like again, I sort of kept to myself in high school for the most part, and like anytime I would get like bullied a little bit, it's more so like I would laugh it off a little bit. I know you joke about Sonic, but even in middle school, I would have this internalized habit of liking Sonic and not really sharing that fact. Granted, I kind of justify from equality. I did mention this earlier. I felt that way about Nintendo too, but just like nowadays, I don't care, obviously. I still stuck out for the guy because he means so much to me at the time. I mean, at that time, I'd probably be ribbing all the same, but thanks to freaking Shadow Generations, I can't even be mad at Sonic people anymore. Shadow has won me over. I can't believe it. It's like a look into my inner psyche. But,
You know, and you were really into
Yeah.
Matt Damon. I wanted to be a mime.
oh,
Oh, wow.
fascinating.
Yeah.
You're perform. You know, you became
I
a
mean, he seems like
performer,
he
so
could
I
pull it
think it works
off.
out in the end. You know.
Yeah. I guess I was asking for it in a way.
I was like the kid who corrected the teacher, and like, that doesn't make you a lot of friends, or like reminding the teacher, like, you forgot to give us homework.
I don't
Like
think
in
I
the
ever
middle
That'll
of
did
the
get you
that.
hall.
bullied. Desi, that'll get you bullied.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's strong coffee.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little about neurodivergence and emergent technologies. Now we're all relating through screens all the time. Right?
Yeah.
And you and I are relating through that right now. And how do all these screens factor in? You know, is it helping? Is it helpful? Is it hurtful? Like, what's up?
Yeah.
Let me give you my perspective on this first. Again, when it comes to the internet, I mentioned this a little bit ago. I think the sad fact of the matter is because of how harsh and mean and just cruel the internet can be, a lot of the time, you kind of have to go in with thick skin. I'm telling you now, if I received the comments I got on my past few videos when I was like much younger, or if I like took things much more personally, I would have left the internet for good a long time ago. It's like, am I gonna say that being a YouTuber or a streamer is harder than being a doctor or a builder? Granted, I don't know from personal experience, but obviously not. No. Those people go through so much to do what they do. But at the very least, if you're in those positions, you're not getting thousands of comments from random people all over the world just saying the nastiest things about you. And so I feel like there needs to be more studies about like internet behavior in general and how to not take it super seriously, especially in the case of comment sections, whether it be like extremists or basement dwellers or anything in between, where it's just like you have to sort of go in where it's just like, from someone I know, the best way to describe it is like, it's like the sun. You want to be close enough to the sun to catch its rays, but get too close and you'll just burn up instantly. And if you're someone that takes things really personally, if you have very thin skin, if you suffer from anxiety or just, internalized dark thoughts about yourself, I'm going to just, as me as this sounds, I'm going to tell you directly, you should not be on the internet as like a creator at all, because you're going to internalize a lot of horrible things based on what people say to you, because a lot of people will say this, and it feels true a lot of the time. One bad comment, you will feel a lot more than 100 good comments. I've been on the internet long enough to tell you that I don't really take a lot of it seriously, because, again, like, if someone's leaving a really rude comment towards you, their parents likely hate them. But, like, yeah, it's just, like, internet spaces, because, especially due to the anonymity of the internet, I think it's a matter of, you just gotta find your circle. You gotta find your circle of people that are willing to meet you halfway, that are willing to accept you for who you are. There are a lot of spaces like that. I think this space is a perfect example. I expect people to be respectful and thoughtful. I mean, obviously we joke around a lot here. I expect people to be thoughtful and earnest in my community. And if you're not, you're gone. So you can expect people to be, like, nice to you, like, and thoughtful in my space. Expecting the internet in general to be nice to you, that's just a wash. It always has been and it always will be. The best thing that you can do, whether you're neurodivergent or otherwise, is to just understand it's not about you. It's about them, like, 99% of the time. And, while also respecting boundaries, obviously. Like, don't get parasocial with people. Just finding connection in the right space, even having people that are a bit more neurotypical, finding a space for you that, is safe, can help you out and will, like, ban bad behavior and everything. I think that is very, very important for people to be able to find.
So this whole issue of social media and technology can be really interesting for autistic people. So, in my dissertation, like I said, I interviewed autistic people about their social experiences. And one thing that came out, especially for Black autistic people and autistic women, was the internet was like really powerful for them. So that's where most of their friends were online, people on like Twitter, or, I had people who were like, I found people who are interested in K-pop like me. It's like, been a really good.
That is a very important thing too in internet spaces, where it's just like, where you can find spaces that are much more tailored to your interests than a lot of spaces within the real world. It's much harder to, like, find a space dedicated to where it's like gaming or like music or sports in, like, the real world, compared to, like, the instant so it's like, go on Google, type in, like, I don't know, baseball community, for example. You're going to find it. Type in friggin' Undertale community. You're going to find it. Now, granted, are all the people in those communities going to be great? No. But at the very least, yeah, finding that space, it is one step of the process. But obviously, moderation is key.
Tool for a lot of people to find people who are similar to them, maybe other neurodivergent people, other people with overlapping interests, and there's a lot less social pressure than like a face-to-face interaction. So we did a study here at UMD with kids, and many of the kids said, like, oh, I met like friends online through like this game I played, and I don't really have friends in person. That said, it can also open up some trouble for neurodivergent people. So cyberbullying, something that can
Yes.
be really common for neurodivergent people.
I mean, I literally just gave my thoughts on cyberbullying. You kind of have to go in with thick skin and not take it too seriously.
I think, like, especially kids who are in school, they can have videos spread around them making fun of them. When I was in high school, there was a Facebook group that was called, like, This Kid Has Asperger's Syndrome, and, like, a bunch of people were joining it, and that's really messed up.
I mean, to be fair, I never had this experience in school, thankfully. But yeah, that is another common thing, which is, like, people will post blunders out of their control on, like, what, TikTok or whatever social media platform is super popular, Instagram, and just, that does create harassment. And thankfully, that's never something I've had to deal with. But yeah, it's just, unfortunate. But I have thankfully seen cases where like a lot of people go to defense for those guys, which is great.
Like, why would you do that? But you know, that is a really common thing. Many neurodivergent people get bullied. I had someone who was in my dissertation who said like they used 4chan a lot and like
Well, the fact that you chose 4chan in particular was already the worst choice you could have
obviously
made.
they get bullied all the time on there.
Like 4chan is basically like the definition of anything goes. Everyone is going to be a massive tool to each other, and unless you go in with that mindset, everyone's going to have a bad time. No one makes out of 4chan the same person they were when they walk in.
There's a very like aggressive environment on that website, so I do think it can be both.
Even then, with platforms like Instagram, it's tailor-made to keep you suckered in. And if one rage bait reel makes it into your timeline, kiss your mental health that day goodbye. Yeah, literally. I know this from experience, too. This is something I talk about in the Grifters video. Like, algorithms specifically are made to keep you hooked on the platform as long as possible. I mentioned that video from the Retro Sofa on that video about modern gaming losing its soul. And I think it's a brilliant case study on how social media gets you angry about a lot of things and doesn't want you engaging with the meme. Especially in the case of gaming. It feels like a lot of people within those angry gaming spaces are so far removed from why they even play games in the first place. But yeah, thankfully, you know, I have the fortitude to like get away from that sort of thing most of the time. And like, unfortunately, a lot of people just don't go out of their way, like click not interested, and make sure that algorithms are tailored to what they want. Because at the end of the day, algorithms want to keep you on a platform for as long as possible. And so they naturally want to feed you stuff that you will like. And so if they find out, oh, you don't, excuse me, if they find out you don't like this specific thing, they'll do their best to filter out a lot of that stuff for you. Granted, it doesn't work all the time, but in my case, especially in the case of like filtering out keywords, for example, it definitely helps out a little bit.
I think it also is tough because for many autistic people, those relationships that they have online, they'd like them to expand into something more. They'd like to have that face-to-face, you know, interaction and connection, but they can't, you know, for whatever reasons. It can sometimes be a barrier and be a little harder. You know, they still have these unmet social needs. So I think it can be both a benefit and a challenge. I'll also just add a couple more like quick points.
Yeah, please.
Two benefits outside of relationships for these kind of online interactions are you know, you get more flexibility. You could go to school online or, you know, work virtually. It does help for like accommodations for people. You know, maybe you just like can't go in one day or you have a communication barrier.
I mean, thankfully, when I was working at my college back in the day, I deliberately like communicated with like my coworkers, hey, I can't come in that day. I'm really sick, or just like, you know, my family's having like trouble right now. I can't cooperate, and they've always been supportive about that. But obviously, that's not going to be the case for every single job. I know Screen Zen helps sometimes as someone who has and wants contacts with people on Instagram while not getting sucked into a rabbit hole. I think it's also just a matter of like monitoring yourself. There's an app called like Cold Turkey where like you have like screen limits a day. So for example, you could set a screen limit for like, I don't know, if you're constantly on Instagram, for example, I could set so like, oh, I can only scroll on it for like 20 minutes a day. And then it just locks it out and I can't use it again for another 24 hours. Which I think could definitely really help. If you have the discipline to actually go through with it and not uninstall anything, I think that does really help out a lot of people. There's this guy I know who was constantly like scrolling TikTok all day, but then set a screen limit for like 20 minutes, and suddenly like they're a lot more productive. They'll make exceptions for when they're at work since it helps make the time fly by. But like, but yeah, I think, you know, I think this is another thing too. I think social media apps in general just need to stop infinite scrolling, because just like you can easily get suckered in all day. Hours will go by, you'll never get it back. Obviously, there's a bit of a slightly different conversation, but I mean, not really, because like I think neurodivergent people can like get suckered into just infinitely scrolling all the time, especially since it's super easy to do. I know that from experience. I'm hoping to replace more of that scrolling with gaming more and more over time. I mean, I typically only just use YouTube, Discord, and Blue Sky these days, but I'm trying to go bit by bit. Even with Blue Sky, I don't really follow anyone anymore. I just simply just use it to post stuff, and that's it. So that's already progress for me.
Then the other thing is like text-to-speech programs and assistive communication. So many autistic people don't speak with words, but they're able to communicate through like an iPad or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's what the doctors assumed that I was gonna have to do. But yeah, thankfully, I mean, I progressed way farther past that.
So I think technology has been like both really great, but it can also, present some dangers.
What about the future? Where do you think this is going? Do you have hope? You seem like a very hopeful person. It seems like we're gonna learn.
I mean,
to
yeah, she does.
accommodate
She's
a little bit more. What do you
giving
what
off
do
a
you
good
think?
impression.
I like to think that, the universe is shifting towards, this balance, this acceptance for, everyone. We're seeing over time we are becoming more accepting of differences. I think that with
Slowly but surely,
the
yeah.
way that the world is now, it's so global. You have to be accommodating of people who are different from you and accepting to things, whether it's people from different cultures, different backgrounds, or, people with
Especially if you want to build like a big, thriving community, I think that's very valuable.
different brains. So
With
I'm really
perspectives and
hopeful
everything.
towards that. I already I've been in autism research for, I guess, like almost 10 years now, and I've already seen a big change,
Both of us
not just
are
within,
wearing
the
red,
field
yeah.
in general, but within my own work, and my own understanding, my own interactions with autistic collaborators and students and, even participants who I'm talking to, and every person who I talk to, I walk away from that conversation having learned something. So I think that's really cool, and
Yeah, learning experiences are definitely like, not only does it help the understanding people that are different from you, but also just, does a good job at, forming better connections, and that's
I
great.
really just believe in the best in people, so I really do think that it's going to get better.
She is huffing on so much hopium right now, and you know what? Better her than me. Better her than me. We all need to huff on the hopium, okay? Like, and this is not a request. This is a demand, okay? You are, here you go. This is your hopium for the day. You will be taking it, and it's gonna taste so delicious. We need more positive people like you in this world, Desiree. You've been giving off a really good first impression, honestly. I don't know, just these stories from people that are just trying to get a better understanding of the world and like posing these big questions. It's always fascinating. Thank you so much, Alloy. I really appreciate that. I was hoping this stream would be like a nice way to like close the gap and like open the border when it comes to like questions about this sort of stuff, and I really appreciate that.
I've seen it getting better for a lot of autistic people I know. And yeah, I know that a lot of them, they say it's not great now, but like they also have hope for the future. And
yeah, definitely.
I hope that we can kind of shift our understanding of autism to be more accepting, because regardless of a person's ability level, things like that, if we reduce stigma, we can make their life a little better, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
One step at a time.
Desi, thank you so much for stopping by the window and talking to us.
Yeah, we definitely need, like, I'm hoping to, a lot of my future videos is definitely going to have that more optimistic side of things. Granted, I am going to be recording a video tonight that is the opposite of optimist, but I'll explain that in a little bit. But yeah, no, it's always good to, like, have those types of conversations. This is why I have a hard time taking grifters seriously, because it's just like, it's all doom posting, and I think it's like, not to say that it's healthy to be like super happy like all the time. I definitely think it is important to be critical and be like mindful and everything. I think what's important is having that yin and yang, that balance between the good and the bad, the light and the dark. There is no darkness without light, and vice versa, right? I think it's important to find that balance in order to like try and get a better understanding of ourselves, the world as a whole, It's just, yeah, it's like you just because someone is focusing on the negative aspects of things does not mean that you just go and throw positivity out the window, or vice versa. You need to find the right balance. Does it involve a certain soundtrack on a music platform? You caught me red-handed, buddy. You caught me red-handed. I'll explain in more detail after we're done with this. Yeah. Yeah, you have to find that balance between the positivity and the negativity in order to, like, really find the full answer. Just the full answer for everything. Something that's super accurate so that even someone that disagrees with you, a reasonable person that disagrees with you anyway, can understand where you're coming from.
This was really fascinating. I could talk to you for hours, and I really learned a lot today. So you're great.
Thank you for having me. This has been one of the coolest things I've ever done, and it's been so nice talking to you.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime. All right. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, no. I mean, Desiree seems like very beaming with life and like love and everything. And I appreciate that. It's always nice when a guest is able to give off a really good impression, bounce off the host really well, and just, have a very nice open conversation. She seems very smart and engaging and just, thoughtful, funny and everything. Very, very nice to talk to. So, we'll see you another time in the future, Desiree.
You too. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, Desi. Bye.
Bye.
All right. That was exceptionally informative. I learned a lot. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think a lot of this stuff I've already processed in my mind before from my own experiences, but just hearing them vocalized by someone who's far more of a professional in the field than I am, it definitely validates those thoughts.
Just a few things that I wrote down. Neurodiversity is human diversity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
I mean, it's all a spectrum, whether it be physical or mental.
When I usually think of the word diversity, I think of culture and language and even food. But of course, that applies to our brains too. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an entire spectrum.
Difference isn't necessarily deficit.
Of course.
There are, in fact, circumstances in which the things that make us different are also the things that make us strong.
100%. Whether it be, again, not to say that you can't find any sort of deficits, but more so it's just since the brain functions so differently, it's always some people will accomplish things really well that neurotypical people typically can't, and vice versa. And that's not a bad thing.
The last thing I wrote is she said acceptance, advocacy, and love
of course
are things
the big three right there.
A neurodivergent child might need.
I love how Steve still speaks like he used to, more serious but the
those are
same.
The things that
I think
all
that
human beings need.
I think that is what I think made him such a great host for Blue's Clues, because it was more so he felt real, he felt genuine. Definitely much nicer than I typically will be. But yeah, just in general, just a warm, welcoming presence in general. And not to say he will never have his off days. I think all of us do. But in general, I think just the way he's able to just approach and talk to people so efficiently and just so directly and just so calmly. I feel like that was such a huge reason why Blue's Clues was so successful at what he's trying to do. And I think that's a big reason why his podcast is successful as what he's trying to do as well. Because, yeah, it's more of the same, just, meeting adults at that level while also not talking down to them. Same with, talking to children without talking down to them. I think that's what made Blue's Clues such a brilliant kids show, and why why a lot of it still resonates with adults now.
We just need them differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's go outside.
We shall.
Neurodiversity is human diversity. That one resonates with me. Because we're all unique, right? Mm-hmm. And if we're all unique, doesn't that mean being unique is normal?
That's definitely an interesting way of putting it.
Could it be that difference itself is the most human part of us?
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, if all of us were the same people, if everyone had the same opinions, I mean, that would just be the most boring world to live in. I think, yeah, being different is very much a quote-unquote normal thing. Maybe our brains are different than, your average neurotypical person that is much more common than us. But at the end of the day, even neurotypical people are all very different from each other. Whether it be like, their interests are everything, like what they strive for and everything. Not to say they're all good people, but they're all different. I think that's the big thing, and I think that's what makes human life just so special and so unique. Whether you're neurotypical, neurodivergent, and yeah, I feel like this is something we should definitely be advocating more a lot. Not to say that we don't see a lot of it, but I feel like it's important to have these discussions every now and then to sort of just get a better understanding of people, our interests, what makes us special at the end of the day. Of course, you could argue when everyone's special, no one is, but just Quinn syndrome right there. But at the end of the day, we're all different, and trying to better understand that is better than just trying to break down the doors. And I think I've been streaming for so long that my pop-out chat ended up crashing on me. So that's nice. Yeah, my live stream page ended up completely crashing on me. So that's fun. I'm still streaming. It's just I can't see the chat anymore. So that's nice. And yeah, that's lovely.
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think I've explained myself very, very well within this video. Or this stream, I should say. And of course, YouTube's having a meltdown on me, so I can't even see anyone in the chat anymore. So I am going to have to pull up the chat on my phone now. Just so I can... I mean, I'm basically about to end the stream in just a little bit anyway, so it's like, not a big deal. But regardless, that's stupid. I still need to figure out a way to fix that. Maybe I need to stop logging in on, like, my main account. I don't know. Yeah. I pretty much said my piece, Steve.
Yeah.
It's our domain now.
Well,
not for long. Not for long. I see it now. I love how people say we're all special when that fact is very much true. We all have unique experiences, and that defines us as human. Yeah, exactly. Like, no P is going to be in the same pod. Let's go gambling. Save that for the Balatro stream, okay?
Well, thanks for coming by.
It's always a pleasure, Steve.
Thanks a lot.
I'm glad we
It's
can
always
continue the
great to see you.
conversation.
Really.
Well,
You look great.
Thanks. Well, oh, you look even better. It's really good in the hat. Thank you so much, Steve. I just got this haircut yesterday. Thank you for telling me that. And then this nice shot of nature. This is a sign for y'all to go outside and touch some grass. Just take in the beauty. I'm pretty sure he composed all this music himself, too. Or he just, or I think it's, he commissioned it for someone. I don't remember specifically. I think he did. But yeah, very lovely podcast.
Alive with Steve Burns is a Lemonada Media original. If you haven't subscribed to Lemonada Premium yet, now's the
So yeah,
perfect
you
time.
get some behind the
You can listen
scenes
to the show
material.
completely ad-free. Plus, you'll unlock exclusive bonus content from me as I reflect on this
I'm not
episode.
familiar with Lemonada,
Just
but I'm
press
sure it's a good
subscribe on Apple
podcast service.
Podcasts, head to lemonadapremium.com to subscribe on any other app, or listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership. That's Lemonada Premium.
I would if spring was a thing. I mean, here in Arizona, yeah, oh, spring fever. Yeah, it was, yeah, it's unfortunate. But yeah, here in Arizona, the summers are so bad here. The second you step outside, you burn.
.com. Alive is hosted
Steve
by me,
Burn.
Steve Burns, and produced by Jeremy Slutskin. Our editor is Christopher Champion Morgan. Our associate producer is Akshaz Tharabailu. Audio engineering by James Sparber. Lemonada's SVP of weekly programming is Steve Nelson. Executive producers are Jessica Cordova-Kramer, Stephanie Whittles-Wax, and me. We'll see you next week. And you look great, by the way.
And you look even better. You look even better, my man. I'm gonna friggin' rewind for a moment just so it's not completely dark on my face. But yeah, I'm glad we were able to have this conversation. It was a really lovely time being able to just talk about something that matters to me so much. And I think next year, should this channel or my main channel grow to such a point, I want to do something bigger for that, whether it be like a fun little gaming stream for charity or something. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But with that being said, yeah, this is my little autism awareness month stream. And yeah, I definitely encourage you guys, if you want more interesting conversations about like just human beings, how we live our lives, definitely go and give Steve your support on his channel. He's done, give me a moment. He's done so many interesting episodes about all sorts of things about human life, whether it be about critical thinking or even like tougher subjects like masculinity, gun culture, or stuff like friggin' depression and everything. Very much, even if you're a big Blues Clues guy, he did an episode talking about like the behind the scenes of Blues Clues with some of the original show creators, and that's really cool. I'm a new sub from your recent vids. Keep making awesome videos. I really enjoy your thought process. Keep it up. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that a lot. And yeah, so I definitely encourage you guys to go and check out the show for yourself. But with that in mind, I am going to be wrapping up now. I'm going to be recording a video tonight, actually. I said that I was going to hold off on making more videos on this channel until, what was it, early May? But there was a piece of news that came out that was just so dumb today. That came out today that I have to talk about. Basically, the Super Mario Galaxy soundtracks have been put on Spotify for the 40th anniversary of Mario as a last-minute celebration thing. But they're only going to be on there for a limited time. And I'm just like, what are we doing here? Okay, yeah, no, I think I literally found out what the problem was. I think I literally did find out the problem with my chat breaking. Yeah, I think it was because I was literally logged in on my other account where it would show up that way. In that case, since I can access it on my computer again, I will go ahead and leave a link to Steve's channel in the chat if you want to check it out. And yeah, as for future streams, we're gonna get back to the fun gaming stuff very soon. Since enough people seem to be interested in it, I think I'm going to be starting up a playthrough of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, because I've never actually played through that game before, and I think it'd be really fun to do that on a stream. And depending on if I get Tomodachi Life, which now that I think about it, is a bit more likely. Again, I'm going to say, if it wasn't for Tomodachi Life being like a fun thing to stream, I probably would not be getting it. I think it might be fun to do that. But either way, yeah, I think that is going to be it for this stream. So thanks for coming out and talking a little bit about autism with me. And good old Steve Burns, I really appreciate it. And again, sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning. Frames were starting to drop pretty early on again after I started my computer back up. But I turned down the bitrate a little bit, and it seems to be fine. But yeah, I'm rambling now. I'm going to get to recording that Galaxy video now. My next videos after this are going to be a lot more interesting and positive, hopefully. And yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me, having a good time. And yeah, I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Since I feel like I'm just rambling at this point. Thanks for the support. Thanks for that super chat earlier. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I guess I'll see you either... I'm going to try to get that video out tomorrow because it's going to be a very quick video to make. See you for that. See you for like Ocarina of Time. I'm going to get back to main channel stuff with Leaf Haven as well. And yeah, you all have yourselves a fantastic evening. God bless and have a good one. Bye-bye.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.